Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Esports Millionaires. Today we are documenting the journey of Ocelot and how he went from being one of the most toxic League players in the community to now one of the most successful CEO owners in the world of esports. If you're new here, hi, I'm your host, Gracie Starr, and just like Ocelot, I like scarves. Okay, well, maybe not as much as Ocelot likes scarves, but I do like them. Just maybe one at a time. Much better. Anyway, this is a weekly series highlighting the lives of different esports millionaires, so be sure to subscribe if you're looking to follow along with this. Quick question though, before we get started, what gaming community would you guys say is the most toxic? Oh, and be sure to drop a like if you're really enjoying our content or want more of the esports millionaires. Speaking of which, this episode is going to look a little bit different than ones we've done previously. We've shown you pro players. We've shown you content creators. But what about the people behind the face of the organization? On this episode of Esports Millionaires, we shall be looking into the founder of G2 and ex-Pro League player Ocelot. Carlos Rodriguez Santiago was once a large competitive figure in the world of LCS. Under the gamertag of Ocelot, Rodriguez competed with SK Gaming in the early 2010s. As a mid laner, Rodriguez had a lot of responsibilities to uphold for his team. He needed to let everybody know when the enemy mid laner would rotate, and also be readily available to help his jungler safely secure Scuttle. Needless to say, Rodriguez liked keeping himself busy both on and off the competitive scene. But just like many other professional gamers, Ocelot's competitive career was fairly short-lived, lasting approximately 5 years before his retirement at the age of 25. Traditionally, many professional players do step away from the competitive scene in their mid-20s. It's just a matter of time before players leave the professional gaming scene and shift into streaming. After all, they've already built up their fan bases and probably have consistent viewership. But what if streaming wasn't the only option for retired players? At the start of 2014, just 4 years after Ocelot entered the world of professional gameplay, Rodriguez left SK Gaming to form his own org. Let's just say the community was anything but supportive when Ocelot started up this project. Given his toxic nature and behavior, he had quite a negative reputation following along with him. Despite Ocelot having the necessary funding from large investors and a really supportive fan base, the project was immediately dismissed by the community as a failure. A lot of people accused him of using this franchise as just a vanity project, or some other way to bolster up his reputation and make himself look good without actually caring about the teams that were a part of the org. Despite these kinds of accusations though, Rodriguez's org just kind of lacked a certain influence that other rival organizations had over players. And because of this, Gamers 2 was just kind of seen as a joke to the community. Unlike other ex-pro players who found success with recruiting players to their team, Ocelot's toxic reputation in the community far outweighed the respect other pro players had for him. Many established gamers in the community just weren't willing to join Gamers 2 because of that kind of behavior. Not being able to draw in notable players made building his brand increasingly more difficult. But Ocelot didn't let a few rejections get in the way of him building his esports empire. Ocelot knew that in addition to rebranding his own image, he wanted to rebrand the nature of esports orgs themselves. Gamers 2, which would soon be known as G2, focused on building a community of gamers that had the talent to compete but lacked the connections to actually make it in the pro scene. G2's initial lineup consisted of none other than himself and 4 other highly rated amateur players such as JWoww and Yuki. Regardless of the constant roster changes, one thing would always remain constant at G2: the use of underrated players in the EU scene over established pro players. While some may argue that Ocelot's choice in amateur players stems from his inability to obtain actual professional players to his org, it's clear that Rodriguez had a knack for discovering talented players that were flying under the radar. Another unique aspect of G2, according to Esports, is the fact that Ocelot has no problem with removing members of his roster that weren't performing up to his standards. While many other orgs might hold on to a failing player out of just sheer loyalty and desire to keep them on their platform, Rodriguez really had no issue with letting teammates go if they weren't performing up to his standards. These kinds of dramatic shifts are blatantly apparent. As you can see in February 2015, Ocelot completely disbanded his initial lineup just a year after establishing G2. The non-stop cycling of talent is not only a natural phenomenon in the world of esports, but is also a tactic that G2 utilized in order to create the most optimal team possible. This strategy ultimately paid off for the org, as they were the runner-ups in Worlds 2019, losing out to the #1 seed in China, FunPlus Phoenix. Instead of just simply retiring into streaming like many other professional players, Ocelot's gamble on G2 was well worth the risk. The brand was able to expand to other gaming communities outside that of just League of Legends. Today, the brand has 7 teams that compete for different leagues, and an 8th team that focuses solely on content creation. Over the last 6 years, G2 has grown into quite the powerhouse. Dominating the EU scene and slowly making its way to the US, Rodriguez seeks to continue to expand his esports kingdom. So how much income has Ocelot's empire earned him? Let's start by breaking down his earnings. Prior to establishing G2, Ocelot was the captain for SK Gaming, where he played professionally between the years of 2010 and 2013. Ocelot stated that his yearly earnings consisted of tournament winnings, team salary, sponsorship, streaming, and merchandise sales averaging about $950,000 a year. This means he would have made about $2.8 million give or take from his time that he spent streaming and playing on SK Gaming. According to Final Kill, they're suggesting that 70% of the gamer's income during these years were mainly from merch, which would mean that even after leaving SK Gaming before establishing G2 as the empire it is today, Ocelot was making roughly $1.9 million a year. Add that $1.9 million in revenue from his merch alone per year for 3 years until retiring from pro play, and Ocelot's already made about $5.7 million. Now add in G2's tournament winnings of $3 million and $700,000 from the CSGO team he sold to the FaZe clan. Ocelot's net worth is now sitting at about $9.4 million, give or take, from the totality of his career. Oh, and it doesn't even seem like he's close to plateauing as far as financial gains go. Having spent the last 6 years building his organization into a competitive empire, it looks like Rodriguez might be hoping to expand his content team's reach by connecting with popular Among Us streamers.
Kuno!
I guess you could argue that the sky really is the limit for this fast-paced org as G2 continues to dominate the esports world. Just like Ocelot, sometimes we have to take risks to find our success. To see more videos like this one, feel free to like and subscribe below so you don't miss out on more episodes. But that about wraps things up for this episode. As always, I'm your host, Gracie Starr, and we here at the Generation Esports hope you enjoyed getting to learn a little bit more about what Ocelot has accomplished since retiring from professional gameplay.